The wedding invitation trembled in his hand. For the first time in years, the man feared throughout Korea could not control his heartbeat. The grand ballroom around him sparkled with crystal chandeliers and laughter from the country's elite. Powerful politicians stood beside billionaires. Famous celebrities smiled for cameras. Reporters rushed from one guest to another. Yet none of it mattered. Because on the invitation was a name he had not thought about in years. A name that suddenly felt like a knife twisting through his chest. The bride's name was Naya Soling. And standing just a few feet away, dressed in an elegant cream-colored gown, was the woman who had once promised to marry him. The woman he had forgotten. The woman who had never forgotten him. What made it worse was the necklace resting gently around her neck. A simple silver necklace. Old. Worn. Almost worthless. Yet the moment his eyes landed on it, memories exploded inside his mind. A rainy afternoon. A lonely little girl. A frightened little boy. A promise beneath a broken bus stop. And two children swearing that if neither found love by 30, they would marry each other. His fingers tightened around the invitation. His breathing became uneven. Because in exactly 3 weeks, she was going to marry another man. And for the first time in his life, the Korean Mafia boss realized he might have lost the only woman who had ever loved him before he became powerful. But what happens next changes everything. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Physial_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Years earlier, long before private jets, long before luxury cars, long before people bowed their heads whenever he entered a room, there was only a lonely boy named Kang Min-jun. Most people thought he was lucky. His family was rich. His father controlled one of Korea's most feared underground organizations. His mansion was larger than some hotels. His wardrobe cost more than most people's annual salary. Yet none of those things made him happy. Because wealth could not buy affection. His mother died when he was 6. His father treated emotions like weaknesses. The servants obeyed him but never loved him. Every room inside the mansion felt cold. Every meal felt silent. Every birthday felt empty. The young heir grew up surrounded by luxury but starving for affection. Then one rainy afternoon, everything changed. Min-jun had escaped from one of his security teams. He often did this when he felt trapped. The bodyguards searched everywhere while he wandered through narrow streets hidden beneath a gray sky. Rain poured heavily. The streets became empty. People rushed indoors. Soon the boy found himself standing beneath an old bus stop. That was where he met her. A little girl sat quietly on a bench. Her clothes were old. Her shoes were worn. Her umbrella had holes. Yet despite the rain, she was smiling. Min-jun couldn't understand it. How could someone with so little smile so easily? The girl noticed him staring. "Are you lost?" she asked. Min-jun frowned. "No. You look lost." "I'm not." She giggled. It annoyed him immediately. Nobody laughed around him. People usually feared him. Yet this strange girl didn't seem intimidated at all. Instead, she moved over slightly. "You can sit." "I don't want to." "Okay." She continued humming happily. Several minutes passed. Then another. Eventually Min-jun sat beside her. The girl smiled without looking at him. "I knew you would." That annoyed him even more. "What if I didn't?" "You looked lonely." The answer surprised him. Lonely. Nobody had ever used that word. People described him as rich, powerful, lucky, important, but never lonely. Because nobody bothered looking deep enough to notice. "What is your name?" she asked. "Min-jun." "I'm Naya." He glanced toward her. It was the first time he properly saw her face. She was beautiful. Not because of expensive clothes. Not because of makeup. Not because of jewelry. She simply had warm eyes. The kind that made people feel safe. The rain continued falling. Minutes became hours. And for reasons Min-jun couldn't explain. He kept talking. He told her things he never told anyone. How much he missed his mother. How lonely the mansion felt. How his father barely spoke to him. How he hated being treated like an object instead of a child. Naya listened quietly. She never interrupted. She never judged. She simply listened. When he finished, she reached into her small bag and offered him half of a bread roll. It was all she had. Yet she shared it. Min-jun stared. "You're giving me your food?" She nodded. People feel better when they eat. He accepted it. For the first time in years. Someone had given him something because they cared. Not because they were paid. Not because they wanted favor. Not because they feared consequences. Simply because they cared. And somehow, that meant everything. What he didn't know was that this meeting would alter both of their lives forever. The weeks that followed became magical. Min-jun continued sneaking away whenever possible. He always found Naya waiting near the old bus stop. Together, they explored neighborhoods, fed stray cats, shared snacks, talked about dreams, laughed endlessly. For the first time in his life, Min-jun felt like a normal child. Naya became his safe place, his best friend, the only person who treated him like a human being instead of an heir. One afternoon, they sat beside a river watching sunlight dance across the water. "What's your dream?" Naya asked. Min-jun thought carefully. Then he shrugged. "I don't know. You have to have one." "What about you?" She smiled. "I want a family. A family. A happy one." The answer surprised him. It sounded so simple. Yet somehow it felt bigger than all the dreams he'd ever heard. "I want people who choose me every day." Min-jun looked away. He understood that feeling, more than she realized. As the years passed, their friendship deepened. They celebrated birthdays together, shared secrets, supported each other through difficult moments. Naya became the light inside his dark world. And gradually, the lonely heir began smiling more. Unfortunately, nothing beautiful remains hidden forever. One evening, Min-jun's father discovered everything. The powerful mafia leader was furious. He viewed relationships as liabilities, weaknesses, distractions, especially friendships with poor children. The next morning, security guards followed Min-jun everywhere. His freedom disappeared overnight. He fought endlessly, argued constantly, but nothing changed. Weeks passed, then months. He could no longer visit Naya. He couldn't even send messages. The separation devastated him. Meanwhile, Naya waited every day beneath the bus stop. At first, she believed he was busy. Then she worried he was sick. Then she feared something terrible had happened. Yet she never stopped waiting, because she trusted him. 1 year later, fate finally reunited them. Just briefly, just long enough to change everything. Min-jun had escaped his security team once again. He ran through familiar streets, heart racing, hope growing. And there she was, waiting beneath the same bus stop. The moment Naya saw him, tears filled her eyes. Then she ran toward him. Neither child spoke. They simply hugged, tightly, as if afraid they would lose each other again. Because deep down, both knew that day was different. The world around them was changing. They were growing older. Life was pulling them in different directions. And neither understood what the future would bring. As sunset painted the sky gold and orange, they sat together near the river. Neither wanted the day to end. Eventually, Naya broke the silence. "What if we never see each other again?" The question hurt. Min-jun forced a smile. "We'll see each other. What if we don't?" He looked toward the water. For the first time, he had no answer. Then Naya reached into her pocket. She removed a tiny silver necklace. Nothing expensive, nothing special, just something she had saved for months to buy. She handed it to him. "I want you to keep this." Min-jun stared. "Why?" "So you don't forget me." The word struck his heart. He immediately removed a small silver pendant his mother had once given him. It was one of his most treasured possessions. Then he handed it to Naya. "Then keep this." Her eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded. "Really?" Neither child realized the importance of that moment. But fate did. And fate was already writing their future. Night slowly arrived. The city lights flickered on. The world became quieter. That was when Naya suddenly laughed. "What?" "I had an idea." "What idea?" She smiled mischievously. "If neither of us is married by 30. Min-jun raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Then we marry each other." For a moment he stared. Then he laughed. It sounded ridiculous. Childish. Impossible. Yet somehow, perfect. "Fine," he said. Naya extended her pinky finger. "Promise." Min-jun wrapped his finger around hers. "Promise." And just like that, two children made a promise that neither understood would shape the rest of their lives. But what neither of them knew was that tomorrow would separate them for years. And only one of them would remember the promise. The other would forget completely. Meanwhile, destiny was already preparing its next move. And neither of them was ready for what was coming. The morning after their promise, everything changed. Min-jun never got the chance to return to the bus stop. Before sunrise, his father summoned him to the main office inside the mansion. The atmosphere felt unusually tense. Several senior executives stood silently near the walls. Armed security personnel guarded every entrance. And seated behind a massive wooden desk was the man everyone feared. Kang Dae-hyun, Min-jun's father, the ruler of one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Korea. The older man stared at his son for a long moment. Then he placed several photographs onto the desk. Minjun immediately recognized them. Photos of Naya. Photos of the bus stop. Photos of them together. His stomach dropped. His father had been watching. Watching everything. Who is she? Dae-hyun asked coldly. Minjun remained silent. The older man's expression darkened. I asked a question. My friend. A distraction. No. Yes. The room became quiet. The Mafia leader stood slowly. People like us do not have normal lives. Minjun clenched his fists. I don't care. His father's eyes narrowed. One day you will. That conversation became the beginning of the end. 3 days later, Dae-hyun announced they were relocating temporarily. Several business operations required attention overseas. The family would leave immediately. Minjun protested, argued, refused. Nothing mattered. For the first time, he truly understood how powerless he was. The private jet departed before sunset, and as Korea disappeared beneath the clouds, the young heir stared out the window, thinking about a girl waiting beneath a bus stop, thinking about a promise, thinking about a necklace. He promised himself he would return soon. He had no idea that years would pass before he saw her again. What he didn't know was that memory can be fragile, especially when life becomes a battlefield. The following years transformed him. His childhood disappeared. His innocence vanished. His father's empire expanded aggressively. Rival organizations emerged. Business wars intensified. Expectations increased. Every year came with more pressure, more responsibility, more sacrifices. Minjun learned how to negotiate, how to command, how to survive, how to hide emotions. Every weakness was punished. Every mistake carried consequences. The lonely child gradually became someone else. Someone colder, someone harder, someone dangerous. And with each passing year, the memories of a small bus stop faded further into the background. Not completely, but enough. Enough for life to continue. Enough for promises to become distant. Enough for the girl who once meant everything to slowly become a forgotten chapter. Meanwhile, Naya never forgot. Not even once. Years after Minjun disappeared, she still visited the old bus stop. At first every day, then every week, then every month. She knew he probably wasn't coming. But hope is stubborn, especially when it belongs to someone who loves deeply. The silver pendant never left her neck. Not during school. Not during difficult times. Not during heartbreak. Not during lonely nights. She carried it everywhere. Because unlike Minjun, she remembered every detail. The river. The laughter. The bread roll. The promise. Everything. Life wasn't easy for her. Her family struggled financially. There were moments when she considered selling the pendant. Moments when money could have solved immediate problems. But she never did. Because some things are worth more than survival. Some things become part of your soul. Years passed. Then more years. Eventually Naya stopped waiting for Minjun to return. But she never stopped remembering. There was a difference. A painful difference. She accepted reality. Accepted that he was probably living a completely different life. Accepted that perhaps he had forgotten. Accepted that maybe she had only been important to him during one lonely chapter. Yet despite accepting those possibilities, a small piece of her heart remained attached to that childhood promise. Not because she expected him to honor it, but because it reminded her that once upon a time, someone had chosen her, and that memory carried her through many difficult years. Meanwhile, Kang Minjun was becoming a legend. By the age of 32, his name carried enormous influence. People whispered about him in boardrooms. Politicians respected him. Business leaders feared him. Media outlets called him the ghost chairman. The public believed he was merely a billionaire CEO. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Behind the legal empire existed something much larger, something much darker. And at its center stood Minjun. Cold, disciplined, untouchable. At least that's what everyone believed. In reality, something was missing. The success felt hollow. The luxury felt repetitive. Relationships felt temporary. Women admired his power, his status, his money, but none of it felt genuine. Every date ended the same way. Every conversation felt predictable. Every connection lacked depth. His assistants often encouraged marriage. His business partners constantly introduced potential candidates. Yet nobody stayed. Nobody reached the parts of him hidden beneath decades of emotional walls. Nobody made him feel understood. And secretly, though he never admitted it, he was tired. Tired of power. Tired of pretending. Tired of success that felt empty. But what he didn't know was that fate had already begun moving again. It wasn't going to let him escape. Several months later, one of Korea's largest charity organizations hosted a prestigious fundraising gala. The event attracted celebrities, business leaders, international investors, political figures. Attendance was practically mandatory for someone with Min Jun's status. Naturally, he had no desire to attend, but appearances mattered. So he went. The ballroom glittered beneath golden lights. Music floated through the air. Cameras flashed constantly. People smiled, laughed, networked. Min Jun endured the event patiently. Then something happened. Something small. Something impossible. Across the ballroom, a silver necklace caught his attention. At first it meant nothing. Just another piece of jewelry. Then his heartbeat suddenly stopped. The pendant. The shape. The design. Every detail felt familiar. His eyes followed the necklace upward, toward the woman wearing it. And the moment he saw her face, the world seemed to freeze. A strange sensation crashed through him. Like a locked door opening. Like forgotten memories awakening. Like pieces of a puzzle suddenly reconnecting. The woman stood near a charity display speaking with several guests. Elegant. Beautiful. Confident. Nothing like the little girl from his memories. Yet somehow, still exactly the same. Warm eyes. Gentle smile. Quiet strength. His breathing became uneven. No, it couldn't be. Could it? Then she laughed softly at something someone said. And suddenly, the bus stop appeared in his mind. The rain. The river. The promise. The bread roll. Everything. Every forgotten memory exploded back to life. The force of it nearly overwhelmed him. His chest tightened. His pulse raced. For the first time in years, Kang Min-jun was completely shaken. Meanwhile, Naya had not noticed him. Not yet. She continued speaking with guests, completely unaware that the boy she once loved was staring at her from across the room. Completely unaware that forgotten memories were destroying the emotional walls he had spent decades building. And completely unaware that destiny had finally reunited them. But fate wasn't finished. Because moments later, someone approached Naya. A handsome man, well-dressed, friendly. He wrapped an arm gently around her waist, then kissed her forehead. The gesture felt natural, comfortable, intimate. Min Jun immediately felt something unpleasant twist inside his chest. The woman beside him noticed. That's Daniel. Who? The fiancé. The word hit harder than expected. Fiancé. Min Jun stared. His expression remained calm. But inside, everything shifted. Fiancé. Meaning engaged. Meaning unavailable. Meaning he was already too late. The realization hurt far more than it should have. Because suddenly he remembered something else. The promise. If neither was married by 30, they would marry each other. But he was 32. And he had forgotten. He forgot completely. The realization struck like lightning. She remembered. Not because of power, but because he had broken a promise. And the person who suffered wasn't him. It was her. Yet what happened next changed everything. The event organizers soon invited Min Jun to deliver a short speech. Reluctantly, he accepted. As he walked toward the stage, hundreds of eyes followed him, including Naya's. For the first time that night, their eyes met. And instantly, she froze. The room disappeared. The music vanished. The crowd faded. Only one face remained. A face she had not seen in over 20 years. Older, stronger, more handsome, yet unmistakably familiar. Min Jun, the boy from the bus stop. The boy who promised to marry her. The boy who disappeared. The boy who forgot. The speech continued. People applauded. But Naya barely heard a word. Because memories were flooding back. And for the first time in years, her carefully healed heart felt vulnerable again. Neither of them spoke that night. Neither approached the other. Neither knew what to say. But as they left the ballroom, both understood one thing. Their story wasn't finished. Not even close. And somewhere deep inside, fate was preparing one final chance. A chance that would either heal two hearts or break them forever. The night after the charity gala, neither of them slept. Thousands of people across Seoul rested peacefully. But in two different homes, two hearts were trapped inside the past. Naya sat beside her bedroom window. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Yet she barely noticed them. Her fingers gently touched the silver pendant resting against her chest. The pendant she had worn for more than 20 years. The pendant she once promised never to lose. The pendant that belonged to a boy she thought she would never see again. A boy who had suddenly reappeared as one of the most powerful men in Korea. She should have felt angry. She should have felt resentment. After all, he disappeared. He forgot. He broke the promise. Yet strangely, the strongest emotion inside her wasn't anger. It was sadness, because seeing him again reminded her of something she had spent years trying to accept. A part of her had never truly moved on. Meanwhile, across the city, Min Jun stood alone in his penthouse. The massive apartment overlooked Seoul's skyline. Everything inside reflected wealth and power. Rare artwork, imported furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, luxury beyond imagination. Yet for the first time, the place felt empty. His thoughts kept returning to one image. Naya, the moment their eyes met. The pendant. Her fiancé. The word echoed endlessly. Fiancé. He walked toward the window, then suddenly laughed bitterly. The irony was painful. He had spent years believing nobody truly understood him. Years wondering why every relationship felt incomplete. Years searching for something he couldn't define, only to discover that the answer had existed all along. And he had forgotten it. Forgotten her. Forgotten the promise. Forgotten the girl who stood beside him before power, money, and status entered his life. For perhaps the first time ever, the feared Mafia boss felt genuine regret. Not regret over business decisions. Not regret over battles won or lost. Regret over a person. And that realization terrified him. Because some mistakes cannot be undone. Some opportunities never return. And he feared this might be one of them. But what he didn't know was that fate wasn't finished yet. 3 days later, their paths crossed again. A coincidence. Or perhaps destiny. Naya worked closely with several international charity organizations. One of those organizations was partnering with Min Jun's foundation on a large educational initiative. Neither knew they would attend the same planning meeting. The moment Naya entered the conference room, silence fell. Several executives greeted her warmly. Min Jun remained seated, watching. For a brief second, their eyes met. 1,000 memories passed between them. Then she smiled politely. Professional. Controlled. Distant. The smile hurt more than he expected. Because years ago, her smiles belonged to him. Now he was receiving the same smile she gave strangers. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. Neither mentioned the past. Neither acknowledged their history. Both pretended they were simply business partners. But the tension was impossible to ignore. Especially for Min Jun. Every time she spoke, he listened. Every time she smiled, his attention drifted toward her. Every time she laughed, the room seemed brighter. And the more he watched, the more he realized how extraordinary she had become. Not because of beauty, though she was undeniably beautiful. It was something deeper. Strength, compassion, grace, purpose. She had become everything she dreamed about as a child. And somehow, that made him admire her even more. After the meeting ended, most attendees left. Soon only Min Jun and Naya remained. The silence felt heavy. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Finally, Min Jun broke first. Naya. The sound of her name on his lips made her heart tighten. It had been years. Yet somehow it sounded familiar. Comforting. Dangerous. I wasn't sure you'd remember me, she admitted softly. The honesty surprised him. He looked down briefly, then gave a small smile filled with pain. I didn't. The words hung heavily between them. He refused to lie. Refused to make excuses. Refused to pretend. I remembered when I saw the necklace. Naya lowered her gaze toward the pendant. For several moments, she said nothing. Then she nodded. I thought so. There was no accusation. No anger. Which somehow made it worse. Because forgiveness often hurts more than blame. I forgot, he said quietly. The words felt like a confession. A burden. A wound. I know. I didn't mean to. I know. The sadness in her voice nearly broke him. Because she truly understood. And somehow, that made his guilt even heavier. Before either could continue, her phone rang. The screen lit up. Daniel. She smiled softly, then answered. Min Jun watched silently. Every word reminded him of the reality he wanted to ignore. She belonged to someone else. At least for now. And that realization became the beginning of a battle he never expected to fight. The following weeks changed everything. At first, Min Jun told himself to stay away. Respect her relationship. Accept responsibility. Move forward. But the more he tried, the harder it became. Because fate kept bringing them together. Project meetings. Charity events. Community visits. Conferences. Fundraisers. Each interaction revealed another piece of the woman she had become. And every new discovery pulled him deeper. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening to Naya too. The old feelings she buried years ago were returning. Not because Min Jun was rich. Not because he was powerful. Not because he was famous, but because beneath all those things, she could still see the boy from the bus stop. The lonely child who shared bread beneath the rain. The boy who understood loneliness. The boy who once made her feel important. And despite everything, that boy still existed somewhere inside the man. One afternoon, they visited a school funded by the charity project. Children filled the hallways with laughter. Teachers proudly showcased student achievements. As they toured the building, a little girl suddenly approached them. She couldn't have been older than 8. The child smiled brightly. "Are you married?" Nia laughed. "Not yet." The little girl pointed toward Min-jun. "You should marry him." Several teachers burst into laughter. Nia nearly choked. Even Min-jun looked shocked. The child frowned. "What?" Nobody answered. But for a brief moment, both adults remembered another conversation, another promise, another lifetime, and neither knew what to do with the emotions it awakened. Meanwhile, danger wasn't approaching. Jealous rivals weren't plotting. No kidnappings occurred. No dramatic villains appeared. Because the greatest conflict wasn't outside. It was inside their hearts. Especially Nia's. Daniel was a good man. Kind. Honest. Reliable. He loved her sincerely. He had supported her through difficult years. Never pressured her. Never manipulated her. Never hurt her. He deserved happiness. And that reality made everything harder. Because choosing between a good man and a first love isn't simple. One offers certainty. The other offers unfinished emotions. One represents stability. The other represents destiny. And Nia found herself trapped between both. Several weeks later, Daniel noticed the change. Not because Nia said anything, but because he loved her enough to see it. One evening they sat together overlooking the Han River. The sunset painted the water gold. For a long time neither spoke. Then Daniel finally asked the question, "Do you still love him?" Nia froze. Her heart dropped. "I'm sorry." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know." Several moments passed. Then he laughed softly. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I spent years competing against a memory." The words shattered her heart. Because he was right. No matter how much she tried to move forward, a part of her remained attached to the past. Daniel deserved someone who loved him completely, not someone still carrying unfinished feelings. Eventually he reached into his pocket, removed a small box, and closed it gently. Then he stood. "When you choose someone," he said quietly, "choose the person your heart runs toward." The tears finally escaped. Because kindness often hurts more than cruelty. And Daniel was being kind. Very kind. The engagement ended that evening. Not because of betrayal. Not because of scandal. But because love cannot be forced. And Daniel understood that better than anyone. Meanwhile, Min-jun knew nothing. Not yet. Several days later he received a message. A simple message. From Nia. "Meet me at the old bus stop." His heart nearly stopped. The old bus stop. The place where everything began. The place where two lonely children became friends. The place where a promise was made. The place where one remembered and one forgot. Hours later, he arrived. The structure had been renovated over the years, but enough remained unchanged. Enough to preserve the memories. Nia was already there, waiting, just like before. For several moments neither spoke. The silence felt beautiful, comfortable, familiar. Eventually Nia smiled. "You finally came back." The words carried 20 years of history, 20 years of waiting, 20 years of hope, and 20 years of heartbreak. Min-jun swallowed hard. Emotion filled his chest. "I should have come sooner. Much sooner. Years sooner. A lifetime sooner." Nia nodded gently, then looked toward the city. Maybe. The wind moved through her hair. The evening sky glowed softly above them. And for the first time since reuniting, neither was hiding, neither was pretending. They were simply themselves. The way they had always been. Min-jun reached into his pocket, then removed something carefully. The old silver necklace. The one she gave him as a child. Nia's eyes widened. "You kept it?" He smiled. "After I remembered, I searched everywhere." The pendant rested inside his palm. Safe. Protected. Treasured. Just like hers. And suddenly both understood something important. Even when memory failed, the heart remembered. The heart protected what mattered. The heart never truly let go. Slowly, Min-jun stepped closer. His voice softened. "Nia." She looked up and saw something she had never seen before. Vulnerability. The powerful Mafia boss. The billionaire. The feared executive. The man respected across Korea. Standing before her with absolutely no defenses. No walls. No mask. Just honesty. "I can't change the past. His voice trembled slightly. I can't give back the years I lost. Tears formed in her eyes. I know, but if you'll let me. He paused, emotion tightening his throat. I'd like to spend the rest of my life making up for them. The tears finally fell. Not because she was sad, but because sometimes life gives people a second chance. A rare chance. A beautiful chance. And standing before her was hers. Several months later, family and friends gathered beneath a garden filled with white flowers. The atmosphere felt peaceful, warm, joyful. No extravagant spectacle. No media circus. No political guests. Just people who genuinely cared. At the center stood Min Jun and Naya, hand in hand, smiling. The promise had taken decades. The journey had taken years. But they were finally here, together. As they exchanged vows, Min Jun glanced toward the silver pendant resting around her neck, then smiled. Because some promises survive time. Some promises survive distance. And some promises survive even forgotten memories. The little boy beneath the bus stop had finally found his way home. And the little girl who never stopped believing had finally been chosen. Not because of destiny alone, but because love remained patient. Love remained loyal. And love waited. This story reminds us that genuine love is not built on wealth, status, power, or influence. Real love is built on loyalty, memories, trust, and the people who stand beside us before success arrives. Sometimes life pulls people apart, and sometimes mistakes create painful distances. But when two hearts remain connected by sincerity and kindness, love can find its way back. The greatest treasures in life are often not the things we gain, but the people we never should have forgotten. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from, and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to _Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.